In the year 1870, a 31-year-old man living in Cleveland, Ohio, quietly controlled only 4% of America's oil refining capacity. Yet within a single decade, he would dominate 90% of the nation's refining, and by 1904 command 91% of production and 85% of end-market sales. This man, John D. Rockefeller, constructed a system so durable that even the government-ordered breakup of Standard Oil in 1911 failed to destroy it. Instead, his methods evolved, multiplied, and today shape almost every major corporation that touches your life in 2025. The gasoline millions pump into their cars, the medicines they take, the banks where they store money, the online platforms they depend on, the supermarkets and logistics networks they rely upon. Every one of them uses strategies that can be traced directly to Rockefeller's original playbook: complete control of the supply chain, elimination or absorption of rivals, capture of regulators, philanthropic institutions that shape public policy, and the kind of market power that makes true competition nearly impossible. Rockefeller didn't merely construct an oil company, he created the blueprint for modern corporate power. To understand how this structure took form, you must understand the man behind it. John Davidson Rockefeller, born on July 8, 1839 in Richford, New York, grew up under the influence of two radically different parents. A father who sold fraudulent medical potions and cons people with a smile, and a mother whose strict Baptist beliefs framed hard work and discipline as divinely mandated. Those two opposing forces fused into a personality capable of ruthless strategic aggression, yet firmly convinced that his success served a higher purpose. When oil was discovered in Titusville, Pennsylvania in 1859, a chaotic rush followed. Thousands speculated in drilling, wells rose and fell, fortunes appeared overnight, then evaporated. Rockefeller noticed something others missed. Drilling was unpredictable, but converting crude oil into kerosene was the real gold mine. He invested $4,000 into a Cleveland refinery in 1863, and within 2 years it was the largest one in the city. Cleveland had roughly 30 refineries at that time, constantly undercutting each other's prices and fighting to survive. Rockefeller understood he would never win by competing on equal terms. Instead, he pioneered vertical integration, the first pillar of his empire. Most refiners only handled the refining itself. Rockefeller acquired every step surrounding it. He bought barrel factories so he didn't pay middlemen. He built or purchased storage facilities, shipping infrastructure, warehouses, and distribution channels. He negotiated secret rebates with railroads, often receiving payments for shipping huge volumes while his competitors were charged inflated prices. This structure allowed him to sell kerosene at rock-bottom prices without sacrificing profit, driving rivals toward bankruptcy while he expanded relentlessly. Yet vertical control was only the beginning. His second strategy, horizontal consolidation, was even more transformative. In 1872, Rockefeller orchestrated what later became known as the Cleveland Massacre. He approached the owner of every competing refinery with a simple offer: sell to Standard Oil at a fair price and be rewarded with employment and stability, or decline and face a brutal price war that no independent operator could survive. Rockefeller's lower costs allowed him to sell kerosene below production prices, bleeding competitors dry. Over 3 months, he absorbed 25 of the 26 refineries in the city. This approach, purchase when possible, annihilate when not, became the formula for every monopolistic empire that followed. During the late 1870s, Rockefeller expanded into New York, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and beyond, repeating the same script. By 1879, Standard Oil controlled 90% of the nation's refining capacity. As his dominance grew, so did public resentment. Newspapers attacked him as a tyrant hiding behind corporate veils. Politicians warned that one man controlling an industry was a threat to democracy. In response to growing anger, Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1890. But Rockefeller had already devised a solution. In 1882, his lawyers engineered the Standard Oil Trust, a revolutionary legal structure in which multiple companies remained separate entities on paper, but surrendered their voting shares to a centralized board of trustees. This allowed Rockefeller to bypass state restrictions on out-of-state corporate ownership and quietly oversee a national empire. The trust structure became the prototype for all future holding companies, including the multi-subsidiary giants of the 21st century, such as Alphabet, Meta, and Berkshire Hathaway. By the turn of the century, Standard Oil had become the most powerful private organization on Earth. Rockefeller's fortune soared to unprecedented levels, hundreds of billions in modern dollars, and Standard Oil's reach extended into politics, railroads, chemicals, and foreign trade. However, investigative journalism played a crucial role in challenging him. In 1906, Ida Tarbell published a detailed exposé revealing Standard Oil's secret deals, predatory practices, and manipulation tactics. Her work galvanized public outrage and led directly to the landmark Supreme Court case. In 1911, the court ruled that Standard Oil violated antitrust law and ordered the company dissolved into 34 separate firms. But here lies the twist. The breakup made Rockefeller richer. He owned major stakes in all the new companies. As each independent company began competing and innovating, the combined value of the 34 pieces skyrocketed. His wealth effectively tripled. Over the following decades, many of those independent fragments quietly merged back together. Standard Oil of New Jersey became Exxon. Standard Oil of New York became Mobil. They later reunited as ExxonMobil. Standard Oil of California became Chevron. Other pieces merged into BP and other giants. The legal destruction of Standard Oil did not eliminate Rockefeller's structure. It merely rearranged it. Meanwhile, something far more important survived intact: the method. Rockefeller's strategic framework, absolute supply chain control, absorption of rivals, legal engineering, regulator influence, and philanthropic leverage, became the operating system of American capitalism. Amazon follows it through end-to-end control of retail logistics. Google follows it through a networked trust structure under Alphabet. Pharmaceutical companies follow it through regulatory capture. Megabanks follow it through holding company complexity. The approach outlived the man, his company, and even the political environment that fought him. And this system continues shaping your daily life. What truly ensured the immortality of Rockefeller's framework was the final structural layer he added: philanthropy as strategic armor. In 1913, he created the Rockefeller Foundation with an initial endowment equivalent to billions today. And although its stated mission was charitable advancement in medicine, education, and global health, the foundation simultaneously offered him tax advantages, immense cultural legitimacy, and indirect control over which intellectual movements and scientific paradigms would rise to prominence. Through selective funding, the foundation molded American medical education around laboratory science and pharmaceutical interventions rather than holistic or traditional care models, an orientation that benefited chemical and drug companies with historical ties to Standard Oil's own early chemical divisions. This subtle shaping of institutions meant that long after Rockefeller himself faded from public view, the professional and regulatory systems he influenced would continue reinforcing the economic structures that favored large, vertically integrated corporations. His descendants carried the torch, remaining active in global finance and policy. David Rockefeller, who lived to the age of 101, chaired Chase Manhattan Bank and founded globalist organizations that connected political, economic, and academic elites. Through a network of family trusts, the Rockefeller legacy remained embedded in high-level decision-making across industries. By the time digital technologies emerged in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the Rockefeller method had become the default architecture of economic dominance, and the new titans simply updated the tactics for the information age. Amazon, for example, mirrors Standard Oil's strategy almost point for point. It began with a narrow product focus books, then expanded horizontally into countless categories while vertically integrating every necessary component: data centers, delivery fleets, warehousing systems, payment infrastructure, advertising tools, and even entertainment production. It absorbs competitors when possible, mimics them when needed, and uses its vast internal data to crush them when strategic. Google, reorganized as Alphabet, adopted Rockefeller's trust-style structure whereby legally distinct subsidiaries like YouTube, Waymo, and DeepMind sit under a single holding entity. This arrangement insulates the parent company from legal liability and regulatory attention while allowing cross-subsidization, data sharing, and consolidated strategic control. Pharmaceutical giants emulate the regulatory strategies pioneered by Rockefeller, shaping approval processes, funding the same agencies that regulate them, and relying on patent frameworks that prevent competition. Megabanks follow the holding company model so effectively that even sweeping reforms like Dodd-Frank struggle to untangle where one legal entity ends and another begins. But perhaps the most striking continuation of Rockefeller's logic is the way modern philanthropy functions. Today's billionaire foundations, such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, operate with the same dual nature as Rockefeller's original model, publicly emphasizing humanitarian missions while simultaneously influencing global policy, guiding research directions, and reinforcing economic structures beneficial to the industries from which their wealth originated. This is not malevolent in the cartoonish sense, but methodical redirecting billions to shape institutions, ideologies, and priorities in ways the general public rarely perceives. What makes the Rockefeller system inescapable is that it disguises consolidation as convenience and power as efficiency. The average consumer buying gasoline does not see the century-long consolidation behind ExxonMobil or Chevron. The person ordering from Amazon sees only fast shipping. The user entering a query into Google witnesses a miracle of instant information, not a near-total monopoly with deeper reach than any industrial trust in history. Social media participants think they are choosing platforms, unaware that Meta quietly owns several of the largest ones simultaneously. And even those who consciously wish to avoid the system often discover that alternatives are impractical or non-existent. Attempts to opt out of the pharmaceutical model collide with regulatory barriers, cultural norms, and insurance limitations. Avoiding big banks is nearly impossible if you participate in modern finance. Escaping Google's ecosystem means sacrificing enormous convenience. Rejecting Amazon requires enduring higher prices and slower service. The illusion of choice persists while the underlying market structure steadily contracts. This concentration is not accidental. It reflects the natural end state of Rockefeller's worldview. He famously said that competition was a sin not because he feared rivals personally, but because he saw competition as inherently wasteful. Competing firms duplicated infrastructure, squandered capital, and destabilized prices. In his mind, consolidation brought rationality, efficiency, and order. And from a purely economic standpoint, he was not wrong. Under Standard Oil, the price of kerosene dropped from more than 50 cents per gallon to 8 cents, an 86% reduction that improved life for ordinary people. Similarly, Amazon's prices undercut traditional retail, Google made information effectively free, and pharmaceuticals extended lifespans. This dual nature efficiency for the masses, immense power for the few, is the defining feature of the Rockefeller system. Critics see exploitation, supporters see coordination. But both perspectives are incomplete. The truth is structural. The system channels wealth upward while delivering convenient services downward, creating stability that feels beneficial until one examines the distribution of control. The real cost of this efficiency is democratic erosion. When industries consolidate into 3 or 4 dominant players, regulators become dependent on those same players for expertise and logistical capability. Governments outsource essential functions to private giants because no other institutions have comparable scale. When a crisis strikes, only a handful of corporations are capable of responding. This further cements their indispensability and shields them from meaningful antitrust enforcement. But the system also shapes public consciousness. University departments funded by large foundations internalize frameworks that validate corporate concentration. Journalists often rely on research produced by think tanks linked to philanthropic networks. Even cultural narratives about innovation glorify individuals who build massive centralized platforms, reinforcing the idea that scale is inherently virtuous. The average person becomes accustomed to living inside a handful of megasystems, rarely questioning how they gained power or why escape is so difficult. Economically, the system extracts wealth in predictable ways. A typical American spends thousands annually on gasoline refined by a small cluster of oil giants. Thousands on Amazon purchases flowing through an ecosystem built on deep integration. Thousands on healthcare shaped by a century of medical institutional design. Thousands on digital technology controlled by a few platforms. Over a lifetime, this amounts to hundreds of thousands of dollars directed toward companies aligned with Rockefeller's principles, not because of consumer ignorance, but because the structure leaves no alternative. Every path leads to one of the dominant entities. Even if a person wanted to boycott the system entirely, their job, communication tools, transportation options, and financial obligations would still route them through the very networks they hope to avoid. This is the ultimate triumph of Rockefeller's design, a system that persists autonomously, self-replicates across industries, and requires no visible figurehead. It is no longer about a single corporation, but a philosophy embedded into the genetic code of capitalism. By the time Rockefeller died in 1937 at the age of 97, he had witnessed his empire broken apart, reassembled, and embedded so deeply into the global economy that no subsequent generation could imagine an alternative configuration. Steel moguls came and went, railroad barons faded, financiers rose and fell, but Rockefeller's structure became the backbone of modern corporate power. The world of 2025 is not dominated by Standard Oil, but by the concepts Standard Oil perfected: vertical integration, horizontal expansion, legal fragmentation through holding companies, regulatory influence, and philanthropic redirection of public perception. The consolidation that began in the 1870s has reached its logical conclusion in an era where every major industry is controlled by a small group of giants who mirror Rockefeller's methods down to the finest detail. You cannot meaningfully escape it, but you can understand it. And understanding it is the first step toward recognizing the mechanisms shaping everything from your daily purchases to your political landscape. The world you inhabit is not the world Rockefeller intended. It is the world his system inevitably produced.